Anything big in your life that we can kick off with?
Well, I guess the big goings on in the world is
Assassination.
another assassination.
Yeah. Contrary. This is just really tough to add surmising. But I always try to push myself to think in terms of real roots and real long term. I think a lot of people will say in some ways that the peace process will be enhanced. There'll be some just as strongly saying it's not. I don't think either approach I think both approaches are very political in the narrow sense of the term. I know I'm saying things, but the Arab world is not going to let up, Arafat included. Peace process included. And that goes back to deep roots on Israel. I didn't say anything. The history of the Arab world on Israel has none that ain't peaceful. I'm not talking about extremists. And I'm not talking about the folks that live there in Israel and make their living. But anyhow, I don't know.
One of the where we left off last time. I don't know if that makes a difference at this point, but it's we're talking about media, power of the media. We're talking about the power of the media, which dictated what happened at the Million Man March. I think in a larger context as well, the power of the media is something that you wanted to follow up on. And then from 2 or 3 sessions ago, I've still got God and work.
Mm-hmm. Right.
As some.
The work thing is interesting because it's not an assassination. It's closer to roots for me. Let me try to get a handle on where I'm at right now this morning. This is incoherent for a moment, but
Yeah, that's fine.
2 Sundays ago, the gospel lesson for the Sunday was Jesus healing the 10 lepers. And 9 of them took off, enjoying their new life. And 1 of them returned and gave thanks. And he was a foreigner. He was a Samaritan, an outcast. And to hear the pastor preach, I'm not trying to get you in on this, but to hear the pastor preach, this is the young Steve, young pastor. I was extremely disappointed. We're into fundraising 5 Sundays. And to hear him take that gospel lesson and twist it, make it pure law, not gospel, pure law. Just tore me up inside. I didn't say anything, Loie knew I was torn up inside. And Johanna McGill was sitting behind me and saying, she's making comments, what a great sermon it was.
This is an Emmanuel.
Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, on the prayers and the amens and stuff afterwards, she was doubly loud. She was trying to, I think, say something to me. This is really where it's at, kind of comment. Now, Joe's a good friend. The pastor's a nice guy. It couldn't have been a worse sermon. Couldn't have been more opposite what we're called to do and to be. Even our motto for this big drive, the joy of belonging. This was really far out, but it's not for me. It really isn't. Belonging today and in the world is probably the number one quest. Who am I? Who do I belong to? Where do I belong? And so we belong to nation states. We belong to Bosnia. We belong to Serbia. We belong to the Million Men. We belong to Farrakhan. The quest for who am I? Where do I belong? And for us to use that it's like saying, well, you belong over here. It's not questioning the quest. First of all, which you don't have to buy. No, but that's where I have a problem. But biblically, we don't belong to anybody. We are pilgrims. We are strangers. Leave your father and mother. Let the dead bury the dead. Who's your mother? Everybody's your mother. We don't belong to anybody. But the quest in the world is to belong. And so our fundraising drive is called the joy of belonging. Now, when I looked at the gospel lesson, the only belongingness I could see in the gospel lesson is the 9 who took off and said thanks for no thanks and enjoyed life. The good people, the good lepers. The stranger and the pilgrim in the story was the foreigner, the outcast who came back and gave thanks. Somehow or another I don't know how we got that into the belonging. No.
The one who didn't belong came back and said thanks.
Yeah. But it didn't come out that way in the sermon. Everything came out opposite. It's like I've said many times, it's the only book, not the Quran, not Das Kapital, not Mein Kampf. It's the only book in which it's clear we do exactly the opposite of what the book says. In all the other books, you can see how you can be a Shunite or see, what's the jihad differences, you know. You can see in Marxism how you could go this way or this way or this way and interpret it differently. But in the Bible, when it says small is the way it's at, you have a hard time seeing we got to conquer the world, you know, get our numbers together. It's exactly the opposite.
People do, though.
Oh, that's our history since about the 3rd century. That's cable TV. I got to tell you that because this fits some of the things. Lloyd doesn't like it when I turn on channel 38, the Jesus channel. I'm always listening to the enemy.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's right.
Now I've been following, I don't even know his name. He's sort of I don't know if he's Mexican or what. He's a nice looking guy. And what the hell is his name? He wears white suits or white robes, one or the other. And he commands audiences that you wouldn't believe. I mean, all over the country. Los Angeles, mostly in the South. Los Angeles, San Diego, Florida, Texas. I'm talking about he commands 50,000, 40,000 in the big arenas and coliseums, okay? Mm-hmm. And he heals people on stage.
A real charlatan.
He's real Jesus. I mean, he really talks Jesus. Okay. While I was fixing our fireplace for 6 hours the other day, I had him on for a period there. Lo and behold, there's an audience of 150,000. That's quite a few people. And they were totally one with him, okay? Where was this? This was in Ghana. Who is on his left? The governor. Who's on his right? The president of Ghana. Who is saying hallelujah with him? Who is kneeling with him? Who's everything with him? Who's thrown up his hands to God and 150,000 throw up their hands to God? We're not talking, Loey. We're not talking about a little shit here. We're talking about the world. This is the world today. You with me? Back to Steve, the sermon. She knew I was antsy. I was not going to say anything. I was tearing up inside. And finally, in getting the car, she said, "Okay." What do you think of the sermon? I knew I had to be a little trickier this time. And I meant what I said. I think this is one of the finest, to this particular audience, one of the finest fundraising sermons I've ever heard. I mean, it worked for Joe. It worked for everybody around. It is a fantastic fundraising sermon. She's starting to get the message. That's the problem. How do I go to Joe, Hunter, McGill, friend, individual? How do I go to Steve, representing the church, the leader in the church, and say that's bullshit? That's pretty hard.
Part of it I have a hard time understanding is what was he saying that was...
That's a good question. I cannot answer your question other than say the gist of the sermon was the way we give thanks to God is to give money. You didn't quite say it that way, but if I were to summarize it, that's what he was trying to do. That's how you show thanks. Is to give money for our building. I'll never forget, and I think I told you this once too, when I went to synagogue one Friday in Chicago with a student who was Jewish, and she didn't know what that particular thing was going to be, but it was a fundraising service in the synagogue. I came closer to hearing the gospel than I've ever heard it before. He didn't quote any Bible verses. He didn't bring God into the picture at all. He said, look, you want me to do your bar mitzvahs? You want me to bury your loved ones? You want me to circumcise your babies? All that's costs money. And it costs money to do all these things. And I ain't gonna do it unless you fork over. He said it a little better than that, but that's about it. No God trips, no God's will, just a reality, you know. Now, for me as a Christian, that's what we're called to be about, to call things what they are. Institutions are not the gospel. They're necessary for survival. But life is more than bread. Life is more than survival. But they're necessary for survival. Bricks and mortar, money. Whatever happened to you? Bible phrase, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Well, you know, the love of money is the root of all evil is used to raise money. Right?
Yeah.
You give it up to me.
Yeah.
The church.
I mean, we all handle it well.
That's somewhat ironic.
Very.
I think every fundraising, campaign that you hear in the church probably says that at some point.
Oh,
it's a way to separate people from their money, is to say, if you love your money too much, that's evil. Therefore, give it to us.
And I'll never forget a year ago on that point. The sermon had just been that we don't know the will of God. And here comes the president of the congregation up after the service to give his pitch. And basically is what he's saying. Incidentally, we're all asked to give 2% more than we gave last year. 2%. I mean, we got a number. This is the gospel. But anyhow, he said, this is the will of God. We're doing God-pleasing work. What the hell? I thought we didn't know the will of God. Yeah. Now, a little different in the synagogue, I would say that it seems like this is God-pleasing work, and if somebody thinks it's not, let's talk about it. It seems to be that we don't have answers in the Bible. We don't know. We don't know the will of God. But walking away from our responsibilities politically in the country is not the answer either. On the God trip, we are getting two things theologically. We're getting about half of the church leaders are preaching a moralistic, in the beginning it was this way kind of stuff. And and by God, this is the way it's got to be. The other half is preaching sort of an ultimate eschatology kind of thing. The end, 1,000 years, the millennium, when God comes back to earth, or getting to heaven and salvation, the ultimate end thing. Both of them are not biblical. The one half is preaching the in the beginning stuff, going back to creation. God made it in 6 days, and man had one wife, and and develop a perversion, and develop a moralistic religion, the Jerry Falwell stuff, and worse. The fire count stuff is moralistic. Then the other half is preaching the end times stuff, eschatology, the end times, salvation, and getting to heaven. And some of you are going to make it, and some of you are not going to make it. When God comes, Jesus comes back to earth, what will he find, and so forth and so forth. They're preaching ultimate end stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These are my words, they're kind of corny, but both of those are not freedom. Both of them are closing the world down. It's not opening up, which we're called to be about. Both of them are slavery instead of freedom. Because if you go back to the beginning, then you have nothing but rules. How to live, how to fuck, who to marry, everything under the sun. You have nothing but rules. Who to vote for. Christian right cannot stomach Colin Powell. And they make a point out of it. And a lot of people buy it because they want rules. And on the other hand, the folks that are really oppressed get the message that they're going to heaven and all that goes with it. That ultimate stuff.
This is important, I think. The calling things what they really are,
Mm-hmm.
Not glorifying, not deifying, not satanizing our friends, our enemies, what's going on in the world.
Or mountains, or narthex windows, or...
Yeah, I mean, it runs through a lot of things in your life, it seems to me. I think it 2 or 3 little examples. One of the things that hit me, I don't know if I told you about this woman who runs the Body Shop, which she sells cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this book about her they try to be ecologically sound and develop good products and have the third world people who develop these, it's beauty creams and soaps and whatnot. They try to help them along. And the thing that struck me most about her is that she said, these things do 3 things. They clean the skin, they polish the skin, and they allow the skin to keep more moisture in. That's all they do. Mm-hmm. And one's not better than the other. My idea is to sell them in simple packaging in different sizes so people can afford to use them. But let's not make this more than it is. Mm-hmm. after all, it's just creams for the skin.
Mhm.
I mean, and so her advertisement is very plain. It's not unappealing,
Mhm.
but she doesn't do the typical kind of advertising. And it was an effort to say, we can do some good here. This is okay to do, but let's not make this more than it is.
Mhm.
It is what it is. The cosmetics industry advertises, this will make you young, essentially. That's what has to happen. But that runs through, it gets back to, I think, the media issue you were talking about, the power of the media, and this whole thing on preachers. I mean, one of my problems with Greg's church and Trinity, and every church I've been in since I can remember, is that they don't call things what they are. They don't say we think; they say it is.
Mhm.
It's this kind of moralistic preaching of how to live your life. You've got to pray so much. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. The rules and the end and all that stuff, rather than saying, I believe this, but I don't know. I mean, a few conversations with Robert Smith over there led me to say, okay, I can come around here and not be excluded, because he doesn't sit there when you talk to him one-on-one and say he knows. I mean, he talks very openly about doubts. He seems to be willing to
Mhm.
to be open to calling things what they are.
Mhm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Sure. I would say that I don't intend to bring in another subject, but it's just a little thing to make that point. Our society is hanging on the computer today. It puts it all together. The computer allows for no dialectics whatsoever. It allows for no contradictions.
Contradictions make it crash.
Make it crash. And whereas an open society, and here I have great strong belief that the only possibility is the church today, which I don't see anywhere, what I'm about to say. The bottom line of what we must have for life instead of death is dialectics. Contradictions. The coming together of folks who believe the way I do, and Johanna McGill and Steve. I can't walk away from that. I have walked away in terms of saying anything, but not my presence. I don't know what to do, but I do know that our relationship with each other and our words, I don't underrate this at all, I put it at the most important, our words with each other is the starting place to change the world. Not a demonstration, not numbers, anything. Our words with each other on these matters, where we're very different. And I go back to the formula I threw out to you a long time ago. When Walt A comes together with Steve B, dialectics means we got a C, not A, not B, not AB, not BA. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not easy for me. I can be myself. I can push myself to be fairly open. Now it comes back to what you just said, is as long as we call things what they are. I heard in Johanna an ideology. I won't go into that, but I heard an ideology. That means I don't think, it's my guess at this moment, this time, I cannot confront her with dialectics and talk about it. It's going to take more than that. When somebody's in an ideology, they're defensive, and that's it. As Paulo Freire says, walk away, forget it. If they're defensive, you're wasting your time. With Steve, I'm not sure. Steve, I think it's possible. For 20 years, I confronted Brecher after his sermons, and I had the same thing on a different level. He's a brilliant man. And as a matter of fact, my statements to him 9 times out of 10 would make him cry. He'd cry. Nobody knows this. And he'd walk away and says, oh, the Spirit of God is really using you well. And nothing would change. I mean, whether it's his sermons on that put down the Moyas or whatever, I don't care what it was. I'm too wordy to make a point, but I don't know. I do know a couple of things. To walk away from politics in the secular world is not the way to de-mythologize politics. That's the point I'm trying to make. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
To walk away from Steve and Johanna McGill, not walk away literally, but with not ever saying anything, is not the way to de-mythologize bullshit. They're not calling things what they are. Neither one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to have that dialectics. I do know with Paulo Freire that until there's respect both ways. Now, I know Johanna and Steve respect me. How much, I'm not sure. The temptation is, even your best friends won't tell you. The temptation is not to play with fire.
Not to rock the boat.
Not to rock the boat, because you lose a friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's the temptation. That cannot dictate the day. The soundness of time and place is important. And make a distinction there. I have done it in small ways with Joe, but not in big ways. Well, I'm talking about whether it's in secular politics or the church today. You can't. That's a root thing that we're talking about, that I cannot not have on the table here, and that is, for me as a Christian and for the church, you cannot separate the temporal and the spiritual. You cannot separate the two. And so when I say, Democratic Party or Republican Party, whatever, I can't separate it from the theological. You with me? They're not the same. They're very different from each other. They're opposite each other. But biblically, those two are always in tension with each other. There's not to be a wall. For 400 years, the church leaders said, no problem with science. You do your thing, we'll do our thing. For 400 years, until science won the whole game, and then the tune was changed. We got to work together. And of course, when the scientists found out, they don't know where they're going either. We got to work together. That's a root. That's when I say going back to our roots. We got to go back to our real roots on the one hand. And the eschatology, the end thing, is very important to me too. That's not an either or, what I said before. The end things is, why is it important? The concrete is where it's at. The contemporary concrete is where it's at. The temporal. The assassination, whatever, that's where it's at. The fundraising. Now, where does eschatology fit for me? I said just talking about heaven and salvation and everything else ain't it. Life that's more than death is based on the end, not the beginning. The difference is, I might be not saying this too well, the difference for me is, and I will argue with anybody that wants to, theologian or otherwise, biblically, that eschatology, the end thing, the kingdom that's coming, biblically, for the Christian, is already here. It's here and coming, both. And death is now behind me. I'm already in the kingdom. Death is behind me. Now, my guts, my passions, my emotions, and sometimes my head doesn't go along with it. I don't act that way, etc., etc. But death is behind me, and I don't belong to anybody. It's part of that. I'm free. I'm free to be with Johanna or Steve, and let's talk about this. I'm not in a life or death crusade. Death is behind me. I'm free. I'm liberated. Now that means that when I meet somebody, I don't know how to handle Joe. I don't know how to handle Steve or the man on the street or Greg. There's nothing in the beginning it was this way, and this is the way he's taking drugs. Therefore, you do it this way. You follow me? Or he's a homosexual. That takes care of what you do. That's out. I can't go to the beginning. Only the eschatology, the kingdom that's here and coming. So every moment is a new moment for me. Until my physical death, I don't have, on this in the world and not of it, I don't have any answers. I don't know how. But I'm free to dialogue. I'm free to talk. I'm free to take chances, to risk. Free to be wrong. Trouble is, I hate being wrong publicly. And therefore, I probably won't take a chance. Hence the cross, incidentally. I can't do the things that I want to do. I've gone on a long spiel here, but I'm getting as close to the God trip as I can. Even Ed asked me the question 3 days ago, where's the gospel? Well, what do you mean by the gospel? So, God, I'm thinking fast, but I mean, I know I have 3 minutes to do it in, you know.
Well, you can't talk in 3 minutes.
It's, you lay something on the table, you can do that. But if the other party is defensive, there isn't 3 minutes or 3 hours, it's a waste of time anyhow.
I don't read Ed as defensive.
No. I mean, he heard what I said.
Ed is somebody you can talk to
Oh, absolutely.
about lots of stuff.
As a matter of fact, he is
And he's very open.
a shining light in my life because of what you just said. I don't get much of it.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I can't go to my friend Johanna. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some discussions with him, fairly open discussions about, how do we handle this God and Jesus stuff in the hilltop literature, and his beliefs, religious beliefs, if you will, are not too far off of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I felt much more at home with him than I do with most people, and I was a little bit taken aback.
I would guess
at his openness.
I would guess that.
He's not very. I mean, he's got more of the baggage that he carries around. Baggage maybe is the wrong word, but
his baggage is his perfectionism, which he recognizes.
But it's part of it comes out of the life of a teacher, of academia, of there is a certain freedom to not sit back, but to look at the world, look at what is, think about it, discuss it, that's not taken up with the daily hustle and bustle. And so he, unlike many people, you meet in your, he comes in here to do business in this office when he's with me on Hilltop, but he will take the time to sit down and have an interesting discussion about.
We've talked about that.
Wherever it takes you.
He had a heavy morning that morning. We got out and he asked the question, and he's looking before he asked the question because he had to finish up with the Anderson thing, and he writes a speech for the dental thing that night. That was Wednesday, and we took an hour and a half to 3 minutes.
Yeah,
and I said, you recognize that, don't you? That this wasn't a very efficient, productive morning for you, don't you? He said, you bet. I don't know if I can make it. And I said, that's tension. The other is still important. The production and efficiency is still important. But kudos for not letting it rule the world. I mean, be the total thing. Kudos. I'm going to be pushing you all the time as you get on top of this bureaucracy that we're developing to hands-on wherever possible, and it will take away from your production. I'm going to push the hell out of you. But that's the same thing you were saying.
Well, that's the other part of. I mean, that's another kind of part of the same thing is the bringing together of thought and action, and the real insistence on get out there and get your hands dirty.
Even though it's
both literally and figuratively, it's what is it? I mean, for some people, the work they're doing is too important to go build a house. But I look at, you look at what you do, and I even think about somebody like Jimmy Carter, who I have a lot of respect for. He will go out and get his hands dirty in the field, in the important work he does. He pays attention to the details, and he does,
Let me make a comment on that. When you mentioned Ed's life as an intellectual on our faculty, it works both ways. When you mention carpentry, for me, the hammering is an escape from doing words with folks. It's an escape. I'd rather hammer. It's not hands-on. Hands-on for me is taking time to talk to somebody. That I'm not talking about the mother in the house. I'm talking about talking to somebody I'd rather not talk with.
No, I understand that. No, I understand that it's what
It
you
would
said
be
before.
hands-on for Ed, but it's not for me.
No, but hang on. It can't be fun to go at 2:00 in the morning and fix the leaky pipes. You know, but that gives you the opportunity to have a conversation that
No,
you
I-
have no chance of having.
No, I am saying that would be great for Ed. But
And things have changed for you.
Yeah.
I mean, now that's an escape.
I don't want to lose the intellectual faculty thing.
It's Paul's discussion about let's do some work together, and then we can talk to you. I mean, we will get something out of that. We'll be able to talk to each other. It's his way of
Sure.
of communicating. Go ahead, the intellectual.
The faculty thing, I can't think of anybody that's more programmed, more out of it than faculties in universities. On the one hand, you were right. On the other hand, I mean, I can't think of anybody that ought to be really thinking about what's happening in faculty. They got the time. In a sense, they've got the calling. However, the pressure is research and development. And that means quantitative, period. All research is quantitative.
See, when I think about faculty, I think about, in some senses, the Greeks. I mean, it was dialogue.
That's gone.
It was maybe.
It really is.
No, but
within departments. It's gone.
I understand that the trend is to have the administration take over, and the administration is the enemy these days. If there is one in the university.
It's a love-hate thing.
Yeah, but it's Socrates, Plato. Those teachers didn't publish. I mean, they may have been some student may have written down what they did, but the life of the mind was in dialogue with somebody.
What you're saying now is something that was one of the greatest gifts to the world 8,000 years ago or whatever it was that you can possibly imagine. It took many thousands of years to really develop the quote life of the mind, the good part of all that. My whole sociological pitch is we're about to see that totally extinguished. The individual today and dialectics is zero today. Efficiency has nothing to do with contradictions, nothing to do with respect of difference and so forth, or the individual. The individual is a number today. On developed in universities and every department. I totally agree with you, but that's my fight, is that we don't have it. And the university is the last place to find. They're developing the new world of computers who can't stand. I mean, you can't be a prof without sitting at that computer all day today. All day, I don't care what department you're in. You cannot be a prof. That's not a guarantee that you're not thinking, but as long as you're sitting at that computer, you're not thinking.
That's not necessary.
Well, that's an argument I'd be glad to make, but I will say that the good part of faculty is that you got to research something. And in Ed's case, he, for some reason, chose Indians. Mm-hmm. And he took it seriously in terms of time and place and rubbing shoulders. Mm-hmm. And I think the Indians did more for Ed than anything I know of.
Yeah, I mean, he taught. They had that study affects
every part of his life.
Oh, I mean, he discovered they're people, and they believe in the squirrel or something, you know.
Well,
Or the bull, the buffalo.
and my understanding is that he didn't just read about it.
That's right. He went out there.
That's right. And
Vic Hoffman, who died of a heart attack in the senator's office in Washington, political scientist, terrific guy. I stayed with him when I came back from Korea. Terrific guy. He did his PhD on hobos.
right, I remember somebody talking about him.
Case after case. He'd spent every summer riding trains with hobos. Now, I think that's what made him real to me. I mean, quietly he would visit the jail every week. Didn't tell anybody. He would go talk to prisoners every week, which they need desperately.
Well, there's something about people who will get out of their own thing, whatever that is,
Amen.
that makes them people who can deal with calling things what they are. I mean, I think about Rick Bussey.
Mm-hmm.
He spends every summer as a carny,
Couldn't agree
and he
more.
teaches theology. And my guess is that makes him a much better professor.
Those hillbillies help him be a better prop than anything he's read.
That's right.
Now, on the other hand, association with Indians and hillbillies is not going to help you repair a heart, do a transplant or something at all, which some of us like to have around. But the two are in tension with each other, and we're in a world that is eliminating, I call them reference points, all those the various cultures and traditions and languages represent what we've been talking about. And we're seeing them all being homogenized. And by that, we're losing that possibility of creative tension, of contradiction, and so forth. The middle class formula is real good at wiping out all those cultures and languages.
Yeah, it's like the political correctness stuff that goes on at the university, which and not just the university, but in all parts of our society, which stifles discussion, makes people edit themselves. What's right to say here? And it's what you talk about. I mean, I think about, the conversation we had with my parents that was, I did something to cut it off and Patty walked out of the room and whatnot. And you were trying to just have a dialogue.
That's all.
And part of it is that, I try to edit you because I think it's coming off holier than thou, and so I try to I was trying not necessarily to cut it off, but it's essentially what happened.
No, I need that.
But was to try to put it in a
I need to translate
without talking, without beating that horse to death. It was the point is it's sometimes awkward and difficult and not comfortable to have the conversations that need to be had. It's not comfortable to stand up and say what needs to be said. And that doesn't mean that you do it every time that the opportunity presents itself, because, if people are defensive, walk away. I mean, that's a good rule. Sure.
I mean, now that gets to, and then we'll wind down, but that gets to very important sacred for me, which I don't know if we've talked about before. And we're the highest technological society in the world, in America. The whole world's going that way. The blast furnace in the little village in China, they could either keep that up or join efficiency. and do away with a local little blast furnace in each little village that Mao wanted to establish. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've chosen to do away with a little blast furnace because it's not efficient at all in the New World. What did I start off to say? It's very important to me. I forgot. I get so carried away with the blast furnace all of a sudden. I just started saying something. When I get a draw blank, it is a blank. Amazing. This is very, I know what it is. Okay. Now, we are pretty much where China can't wait to get. We're a lot of countries. Yeltsin has got a serious problem. He really needs our technicians. But psychologically, worldwide, politically, economically, he has to be treated in Russia.
Okay, yeah, for his heart,
Yeah.
whatever's going on.
I mean, you cannot separate the whole picture, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be technical in this case. Because technique includes politics and polls and numbers, okay? And I've said this before, but everything operates on two poles, love and hate, pure and impure. A fire and brimstone preacher talks about Jesus. Okay? The more he talks about Jesus, the more he has to do the hell and damnation stuff. Those are a part of our life, those poles. Now, an interesting thing is happening in this global society. In highly developed, highly technical societies, it's a world in which it's not natural, totally artificial. We're even having babies artificially, everything you can think of. Our back to nature in the summertime is the biggest artificial thing you can possibly imagine. I'm assuming you're reading all kinds of things, like campers and TV sets and plugging in, national park and whatever. Okay. We can't live in a world in which you can't even open the damn window. We're not made to live in this total artificial environment. And so we need to compensate. Now, when you're in a totality, that compensation has to enhance the other pole. I'm probably losing you. I'll just say it straight. If you don't see this today, you're not opening your eyes. The opposite pole of artificiality is New Age, back to nature, primitive religions, and the most important word to cover all of those is sex. Look at New Age and so forth and see what I mean. Just the big word sex. The quickest, best way to feel like you're a human being in an artificial world is sex. Now, the name of the game for the Grand Inquisitor is how can we make the opposite of this to enhance us? Sex sells movies, sells TVs, it sells a ton of coal, it sells everything today.
Mm-hmm.
And the means used to sell it are technical means. Advertising is about it's the most technical thing there is. And everything today comes under those, and the religions that develop out of sex, including health centers. Look at the commercials on health centers, bodybuilding, and so forth. The body is all part of the sex. The body is everything. That's under the broad term sex for me. How long you live, your well-being, do you have orgasms, God knows what, okay? And all sorts of religions develop those.
Mm-hmm.
The means for all of them depend on brochures, TV, advertising, and instruments, which enhances the technological society. Those are technical means, 100% technical means. Dialogue, there's no room for dialogue in this. There's no room for, you got to have a million men. And Ted Koppel, you can't just have a black man begin to do his thing with another black man, and so forth. Dialogue with a white man. Dialogue about these things is a waste of time in the world. These are all religions, and it comes under the body, sex. And that is a sacred, when you don't question the means. And the means, the end justifies the means, the Ollie North thing, everything else. The end justifies the means today. If it feels good, do it. Be all you can be by dropping bombs from an airplane, woman. Be all you can be. You don't question that. You know the commercials.
Mm-hmm.
Be all you can be. Violence and sex, all body.
Just do it.
Just do it. Feels good, do it. Now, back to your Plato and mine too, and Socrates. What it means to be a human being is to say no to just do it. Animals just do it. Human beings say no. We're today in technology, if it can be done, we'll do it. And the seduction will begin to take place. Everything we're doing today is totally opposite our forefathers. Totally opposite their way of life, their style of life, everything. And yet the seduction process really did the job on us. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
And that seduction process was the body. When Timothy O'Leary first said, life of the mind is bullshit. You got a body, you got feelings. I couldn't agree with him more. I knew Valpo you too well. In life of the mind, he couldn't touch and feel shit.
Absolutely, and I think that's why he lit a fire.
Absolutely, from all of those poets and everything, lit a fire, because free at last, I have feelings and I can express them,
in a society that was so uptight and unconnected.
Today, the body is one and the mind is gone. Plato, I'm sorry, it's over.
And that certainly wasn't Leary's intent.
No. I think he made a great contribution.
He's an interesting guy.
I haven't followed him lately, but I didn't think, I never came down on him.
He's got Alzheimer's now.
Is that right?
And he's in and out, and he recognizes that. And I heard an interesting. I don't remember.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But it was he has some days he's there, and some days he's just not there. He's dealing with that. I think is what's going on.
Ghana, that scene here, it's on television everywhere. It's worldwide television. 150,000. The state is totally involved in it.
Yeah.
The means are nothing but technical. The tricks on the stage are all technical. Everything's technical. Getting everybody is mob psychology. I mean, that's all technical. Everything else. And the other great force in our world today, the nation state, loves it. It's right there. You could see it. Loves it. The president of Ghana loves it. Liberation country, liberated country, loves it. Because they're not anti-state at all. The biggest force and power in controlling our lives today.
I've been hearing about this this kind of unconnected new church out on the west side of Chicago, suburbs out there. They get 30,000 people. Kind of the 20-something church. You know, it's been around
Talk about technique. I know the place.
20 years. I forget the name of it.
Oh man.
But it's affiliated. I mean, there's all kinds of people, and it's kind of they talk about it as religion light. You know, it's got popular music and
It's got something for everybody. Cecil B. DeMille.
yeah.
I'd never forget when the movie The Ten Commandments came out, the first huge epic. No problem with Jews, Christians. This movie does not offend anybody. That's Hollywood. So much for Jesus. No, the body is now the problem. See, people, you go to the universities, they're into process. Process is big with them. I fight hard. Here, Walt, he never was a real faculty member. You know, I'm fighting hard for content. Damn it! What are we trying to say? They're into group dynamics and process. Holy shit!
Well, you know, I'm into process too in a different kind of way.
Well, you can't ignore it. It's
No.
important.
Rather than content, it's like I've always said, and I think I believe that I don't care what. I mean, I do care, but it doesn't matter a whole lot what content they teach my kids in grade school and high school. I want them to teach how do you investigate something? How do you find something out? I want them to be enthused about learning. About
Yeah, but I think what you're
themselves and
saying
about
is
reading.
you don't want them to be taught answers. That's not content either.
That's right. That's right. What I mean by it is that I want them to learn how to think, how to talk, how to dialogue, how to.
See, that's a funny thing, George. Stop and think we get quit, but every year in urban studies, it's interesting. I mean, I couldn't get over our own faculty. I still can't today. But students would come in spite of us. And because we didn't use books, we didn't have tests, none of that stuff. The whole thing was experiential, touching a Yugoslavian neighbor, uptown, and bucktown, and everything else. We were touching all these different people. And so there's one thesis that something interesting happened. Every student, every year, for the whole time I was there, I have never done so much thinking in all my life. I don't know of any faculty, any student on the campus that ever says that. Okay? Mm-hmm. Everyone says, I gotta go back to Valpo and rest up for a week, and I can't handle all this thinking. Mm-hmm. Now it took what we were talking about before, hands-on and so forth.
Well, it's not academic anymore. It makes a difference. It's real.
But this is the point I was getting at. Now we're just getting it. They're gonna love Hilltop. Place to go. That's starting to get in. It's starting to be okay. See, on the campuses, to feel other people and touch other people and diversity and all that. But what I had a hard time fighting with my own faculty, and I would tell the students over and over again, this is the most elite program that I know of anywhere in the world. You are stepping out. You're in an institution, but you're not of it. We're playing games with your damn grades. You're all going to get an A or B, and we got a silly way to get a few B's in there. You're not going to take any tests. You're not going to have any books to read. It's not a university. You're stepping out of the world, and not only that, you're not working for the CTA or the GTE or anything else. Not working for a living.
There may be a real opportunity to learn something.
You're stepping totally out of the world to take a look. And when first students started coming back during holidays, instead of going home, they came back to Chicago to the real world. I'd make them mad again. I said, no, the real world is back at Carleton. That's the real world. Rubbing shoulders with a Yugoslavian in a bar is not the real world for you.
Yeah.
In terms of the world.
For these students.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the decisions being made today are made out of Carleton, not in that pub.
Mm-hmm.
No, that pub helps you understand, helps you look. They did a good job at looking Carleton. Hey, man, I got to get out of there. You know, I got to get to the real world. No, I can understand getting out of there and getting with real people. But that's the real world. It's not about real people. That's the real world. And come here and enjoy it so you can go back to the real world. I'm playing with semantics.
Yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We tooted our horn for the students really bought and really liked us and everything else. But I don't think we're out front on how ridiculous our situation was. We met the times, and the administrations wanted us for only one reason, because these same students would quit school if they didn't come to urban studies, and they'd lose them. That's why we existed. And we weren't up front.
There's always a tension when you're doing good work. You end up serving the needs of the master.
That's what I meant before when I said Grand Inquisitor. The Grand Inquisitor wants us to fuck around.
Sure.
He doesn't want no sex on TV. Otherwise, they're going to be raising hell.
It keeps people down. It's the opiate of the people.
That's exactly right. And today,
I mean, I found as a union representative, and I went in there, as a radical, and I didn't give a damn about the company if they ever made any money, as long as they kept jobs for my people and we got as much as we could out of it. And, But I found that 99.9% of what I did rationalized production for the employer, made it better for him, and that there was. It was almost impossible for me to do something that didn't make it better for him.
That's exactly.
Because my goal was not to make it better for him. My goal was to make it better, was to get from the rich and give to the poor. But
that's what they like.
What did I do? Because there's a union there, they don't have wildcat strikes. They don't have people destroying property. They don't have destruction. They don't have, there's a way, there's a channel to channel all your anger into. Put it in the grievance procedure, and George will massage it, and you'll still lose, but you won't have hit the foreman.
That's exactly. Now, this is something that we haven't actually said, but it's very important to me. We are in a totalitarian society. When I look at the Hitler pictures, and I've seen them all, God, I've seen them all, I cringe. How could I, you couldn't say anything without being finished, wiped out. You couldn't stand tall for anything. In a narrow sense, that was a totalitarian society. Now, when I say we're in a totalitarian, I mean just like Germany, being a German in Germany. In those years, we're in a totalitarian world, society. There is much more seducing, however. There isn't anything that, I don't know, I call it the Grand Inquisitor, I don't know what you just call it. There isn't anything that cannot be programmed,
Co-opted.
co-opted.
Used.
The word revolution, Max Factor makes a revolution. You know, I mean, and that's a totalitarian society. The difference is we knew what we were up against in the Hitler world.
No. We know now.
We know now, but I mean, you could have known. Well, if you had opened your eyes, you would have known. You didn't want to open your eyes. But now it's much more difficult because how can I be against genetic engineering? Look what it does. I mean, this poor kid's going to be born okay instead of not okay, you know. And you're against genetic engineering? I am against it. In a totalitarian society, there's only one way real humans can talk, and that is no. We got to challenge the state, and we got to challenge progress. It's going to that furnace in the little village is going to go in the totalitarian society. I guarantee you. No matter how many goodies he talked about it, and bringing people together in the community and the camaraderie and so forth, and you can send your top worker to college and so forth. That's gone.
Do you think that the no of the right to lifers, the Richard Stiffs, is that kind of a no?
No, because that no is an ideological no. I'm saying no because we're in a totalitarian society. Those folks can't use enough TV and press conferences and brochures and radio programs. You with me? The first place you look is the means. The means of the no that I'm talking about is a means of love. End and means for the Christian have to be the same. The means of love, the end is the same. Love. No, when we recognize, you can't do this. The Christian right doesn't recognize the totalitarian society we're in, or they wouldn't be doing what we're doing. They're enhancing this totalitarian society. The Grand Inquisitor doesn't mind them at all. Next election might mind them, but that's bullshit anyhow. Politics doesn't run it. It sells. It's an illusion. So the no I'm talking about is a no to progress, a no to going to Mars because it can be done, and all the reasons that we give, which are not sound at all. A no to genetic engineering because nobody can show me the downside of it. We know there's a downside, but we don't know what it is yet and how bad it is. Until that can be spelled out and we can inch forward and work on the downside, then we should say no to it. And certainly we should de-mythologize all of those things.